Hi, welcome. I'm Pete. I'm a docent here at the History Museum, and I would like to welcome you to the Neighbors exhibit. So let's look at one of my favorite parts of the Neighbors exhibit. It's this beautiful map. This is Buffalo in 1863. Most people, when they come in, they look at the map and they walk on, but I think this is fascinating because you realize we're lucky Buffalo's still here in 1863 because they had some really terrible disasters that happened. The first one was 50 years before this. 1813, middle of the War of 1812. And Buffalo and Western New York is the front lines of the War of 1812. More battles are fought here than any other place. And unfortunately, we had some of the worst military leadership you could possibly imagine. Military leader from Buffalo invades Canada, goes up to Newark, and you have a choice of burning the fort or burning the town. He burns the town. All these poor women and children whose husbands were off in the war, they had no place to be. Middle of winter, one of the worst winters in history. This is in December. So they decide to get their revenge, and they come back on New Year's Eve to Buffalo. They march down Main Street, as you can see here. And this absolutely horrible commander decides what he's going to do is take a gun, one of the cannons off one of the ships, point it down Main Street, and try to stop the French and the Canadians and the British. A wheel falls off. So, being the brave man he is, he says, well, that's enough of this. And he takes off, and the poor widows and the women there are screaming at him, where are you going? Where are you going? That's it. All of Buffalo gets burned except for 3 buildings. That was disaster number 1. What happens after that is Buffalo's trying to rebuild. And in the 1820s, there's big excitement because the Erie Canal is coming this way. And the outlet to the Erie Canal is between Buffalo and Black Rock. Who gets it? Now, Buffalo has a problem because their harbor is really not usable because the winds have put so much gravel in front that they can't get ships in there. So the only thing they can do is to build a breakwall. So the first mayor of Buffalo, Samuel Wilkson, gives up his judgeship and gets enough money to create this breakwall. And it's fabulous, works out really well until October 18th, 1844. And what happens then is a natural disaster called a siege. Now, for those of you wondering how it's spelled, I didn't go high-tech, I went low-tech. This is how you spell it. So what is this? This is when it's like an atmospheric condition where for days and days and days there's extremely strong winds blowing from one direction to another. And then the wind in this case blows from east to west across Lake Erie. I read articles that I got from the research library that these ship pilots had talked about the horrible conditions. And what happens is on October 18th, the wind stops going in that direction. And it starts going in the opposite direction. Now all that water, there's a wall of water that's on the other end of the lake that's flooding that end of the lake. All of a sudden, boom, it flows back to Buffalo in the middle of the night, the worst possible time. Hits the breakwall, and the breakwall is only wood and stone, a couple things of wood, a couple of piers of wood and stone. It shatters part of the breakwall and goes through and floods most of the city of Buffalo. Everything south. The water is so deep, it's 6 feet on Main Street, and on Exchange Street it's 5 feet. And it doesn't flow away because there's nothing really there designed to take away the water. So there's at least 78 people drowned. You read horror stories about a hotel that collapsed, houses that collapsed, and people in the basement, you could hear them screaming. There's nothing they could do to save them. It was terrible. Now, after this is resolved, Buffalo is still in a precarious situation. They put a temporary fix on this, okay, on the breakwall, but it's not going to hold. And the Erie Canal is now here. So they have to have this operation. So a hero steps forward to save the day. In 1861, his first act as President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln gets the funds to build the break wall. 2 years later, the break wall is finished. So consider everything that Lincoln had on his plate at the time. And the first thing he does the break wall. Now we're going to talk about how the Western New York area was settled, okay? There were 3 waves of immigration. The first one was very simply put, the people were invited. The Holland Land Company was a group of Dutch bankers, and they acquired all this area. Fair meals were foul, but they got the area. And they wanted settlers to come in. So they approached people in New England and Eastern New York State. Come on, we want you to settle our property. Joseph Ellicott had divided all the area up. It was prime, it was ready to go. The second group, this is like a little before 1800. In the 1820s, they're building the Erie Canal. And the Irish were having problems in their native land. Where is it? Famine. They weren't really getting along with the British too well. And this was their big opportunity to get work. This was fabulous. They could go in there and create a job. That was the Irish. The Scots came in also. Their problem was slightly different in that Scotland really had no land that they could farm, that they could do anything. So this was an opportunity to have a dream, own their own land that they could farm. So this was big. The last group to come in was about 1850 to 1860. They came by railroad. And they were all Eastern European nations. Everybody else. Again, they were cast out. Large Jewish population came in because of the pogroms in Russia and other nations. Again, we're talking about the third wave. Part of the third wave was a man called Manuel Mordecai Noah. Manuel Mordecai Noah decided he wanted to help the massive Jewish refugee population. So he proposes to build a refugee settlement on Grand Island, take over the whole island. And he commissions this stone, which is called the Ararat stone. It's the only thing that's left. It didn't work out. But from what I understand, every day in October they have Manuel Mordecai Noah Day, which celebrates diversity. Not everybody that came here was a volunteer. Obviously, we had a slavery problem in the United States. And this is an actual whip that was used, the leg manacles. Buffalo was the last stop on the Underground Railroad. From what I understand, basically they would go north until they hit the Erie Canal, make a left, and they would cross in Buffalo or Niagara Falls. If you ever had a chance to go to the Underground Railroad Museum in Niagara Falls, it's fantastic. The one hotel there, it was just staffed with fugitive slaves. So when the slave hunters would come up, they'd run across the border into Canada so they couldn't catch them. Now, this is another section that we have that's devoted to showing what the new people coming in, how they cope, okay? Can't see it, but over there, it talks about charitable and fraternal organizations that would help people get settled. You come into the area and they would help you adjust. Today we have Journey's End. A few years ago, it was like 93% of the people coming into Buffalo were refugees from overseas. Companies like this were a great boon. They really helped. If you come in there and you wanted to make money, how would you do it? You would create a market or a restaurant that would cater to your group of people. Okay, so the Broadway market was originally known as the Polish market. Okay, you go down in certain sections in Lackawanna, it's all Hillel and everything else. That's how you made money. People wanted to have a reminder of home. Religion was a huge part of it. Again, not much you can say. This was your key. I mean, if you left home, a lot of these people prayed to God to protect them. In the corner here, we have Bishop Timon, Father Nelson Baker. When I was growing up, if I misbehaved, my father always said, I'm going to put you in Father Baker's home, which I had no idea what he's talking about. I thought this guy had horns and was the devil and everything. Turns out he was a great man. He's on the fast track for sainthood. He opened a home for orphans and stuff. My father just cynically used him to get me to behave. Terrible thing. Okay, we'll talk about the fire department. This was a parade wagon. We have little kids come, we say, where's the front, where's the back? This is the front, okay? Now, one time doing this tour, we had a real old guy that came in here. During Veterans Day, he was a veteran. He told me that his mother was here and was actually in a firehouse when she was a little girl, and she saw this in action. There's the horn that they would speak into. That was a bucket that they used to put the water, fill in water and throw on the fire. But she said the most fascinating thing to her was when they had a fire, you'd see the firemen slide down the pole, but all these vehicles were transported by horses. The horses would hear this and it was, wait a minute, it's go time, and they'd lead them to the traces and they'd stand there and they were all excited. They were ready to go, ready to go, ready to go. They'd hook them up, they'd take off. I didn't know how much I'd believe of this, but later on I met somebody who was a docent at the fire museum, I forget which one, and she said, oh, that's absolutely true. Not only that, but they had Dalmatians. The Dalmatians were trained the exact same way. They'd hear that and they'd sit there and they were ready to go. Dalmatians went into the fire to rescue people. So I thought that was kind of a neat little story. So you don't live by working alone. You have to have some kind of recreation. So you would have music. I'm not sure what some of these musical instruments are. I know that's a drinking horn. But I'm not sure what they are, but music was big. And sports were huge. The grease pole climb, that's still in the Puerto Rican community. I don't know if anybody's ever seen the movie Cinderella Man. Lou Scotta managed to beat the Cinderella Man in a fight. Very famous person. But the highlight of this exhibit, as far as I'm concerned, is this. This is the shoe from Bob Lanier. Bob Lanier was the greatest basketball player Buffalo ever produced. He was in St. Bonaventure in 1970. He leads them to the Final Four. He injures his knee right before they're about to face UCLA. And I wonder what would happen if he wouldn't. He goes on to have a stellar career in the NBA. But the thing about this that really gets everybody's attention is the size of his shoe. It's size 22. The only other one with that size is Shaquille O'Neal. I'm thinking, if his wife was dancing with him, she'd have to have steel-toed stilettos, because if he stepped on her toe, that would be it. Now, you're probably wondering, how big is that? Well, down here, they have an outline of his shoe. I am size 12. You can see I'm not even close. When we have children here, we have the children stand back to back on his shoes, shoe forms, and his feet are bigger than them. So kudos to Bob Lanier, a great man. Now over here, everybody has their own clothing from their own country. And this is what I homage to. We're all in Buffalo, but we're all part of the national, international community. That's basically what it is. What everybody comments is, ooh, Butterland. Aye, aye. We know that. So this is the end of the Neighbors exhibit. It's been a real pleasure doing this, and I really hope next time that you come, I'll be able to do this in person. So again, thank you so much, and take care.